Okay, so
Okay.
I had mentioned that we're going to continue the discussion we had last week and talk about hitting bottom. And I got some visual aids. So I'm going to
Mhm.
do a share screen thing right now, um, and then shoot over to, what's wrong one? Production, how it works. Okay, so starting off,
Mhm. Yes.
I want to share this, and again, as I mentioned when we first started talking, this is my fifth year of continuous sobriety, and the thing is, I consider sobriety a gift. It's a gift that I'm given, provided I continue to do recovery-related things every single day. And the reason I look at it that way is because I know that alcoholism, addiction, these are not substance disorders, they're thinking disorders. I have,
Exactly.
so I
Mhm.
have this tendency to obsess about things. And what I obsess about the most are things that are completely out of my control. And when it comes to my sobriety, the alcohol, it took me every drink until the last drink to get to it sunk into my mind that this is a problem for me. Up until that point, I knew I was an alcoholic. I knew I was an alcoholic back in 1989, but I didn't think it was a problem. And step one in recovery is two parts. It's admitting that we're powerless and that we can't handle it. We need help. And so I could admit that I was powerless, but I was what we call a high functioning alcoholic. So I didn't
Mhm.
need to have it all the time, but too many times or most of the time when I drank too much. I just would lose control of my drinking midstream, and something that started out as, oh, I'm gonna have a couple sips would turn into I polish off a bottle. Um, so for the people who are struggling, I want to put this thing up, and describe what bottom is, because it often takes more than one bottom. And
Yeah.
you may think that you've come to a point where you've experienced the worst possible things in your life, but it's not enough to change your mind. It's not enough for you to not only realize that you have a problem, but become willing to accept help for it. If you're not willing to accept help, if you think you can handle it, then you really haven't hit bottom yet, and you're going to continue to relapse and go back to whatever your addiction is, whether it's smoking, gambling, video games. There's so many addictions that we can have. So I would suggest to you, Selyna, um, that the clients that you experience that have the most benefit from your services have actually hit bottom. Does that seem logical?
Yes, very logical. All of them. All of us actually. We hit the bottom at one point and sometimes more than once. And that is really true. And the knowledge is there. The, we hit the bottom. And like you said, you must accept. There is an acceptance, and we have to go back to to the reason, the biggest why you want to change something.
Right, right. And what is causing you to want to escape in the first place? Because every addiction is a response to trauma. And so, in some way, we are escaping our traumas when we're active in some kind of addiction. Uh, and you can be addicted to healthy things and it's still, in some ways, unhealthy, like bodybuilding. A lot of people change addictions from drugs to bodybuilding or, fitness. And then they become fitness addicts. And now that consumes their entire lives. They're constantly working out, they're constantly doing things to improve their physical state. And then if something happens to them where they can no longer work out, it's devastating because they never took care of the issues that caused them to want to escape in the first place.
Yes. And that is really important to know that people cover it up. But they think they change the pattern, but the imprints from the trauma is still there. But they are just creating new pattern of behavior without deleting the old imprints. So that's the thing that they create, they get into another pattern, but without knowing that is this, that they just want to escape from the feeling that what they don't like to feel. But in our subconscious, that's why, you know, going back to the process of 21 days. That's why we have to really reprogram our subconscious mind in
Yeah.
order for us to create healthy patterns, because that is unconscious. We think because the mind always choose for pleasure and bodybuilding, as you mentioned. Okay, we think, oh, this is good because this is positive. But when we become addicted to it, to anything, and there it goes.
Yeah. I had somebody say something in a recovery group earlier this week that was pretty profound. He told me to remember that every bottom has a trap door.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. And so, you know, you can hit a bottom and be like, okay, that's it, I'm done. But if you're not willing to change your thinking, to put in, to get new input, to get new information, to find, you know, new ways to live, then you're still susceptible. You know, you just enter into this mode we call dry drunk, where, you know, the obsession is broken, but all your reasons for using are still there. And so, you know, the people that aren't willing to take that next step and admit this is unmanageable for me and I need help are at high risk of relapse or remaining, you know, dry drunk, where you're angry all the time and always projecting on other people and always blaming other people. And I have to admit, I've struggled with dry drunk for a long time, in and out of recovery. I've had a problem with that condition. So, you know, I empathize. I've spent way too much time in my life angry about things that, you know, that didn't matter. But, you know, through recovery, I can take new input and insert it in place of old behaviors and, you know, slowly change the way I see life and the way I deal with things.
Yes, and that's a process, of course, and based on your own experience and how you deal with your own addiction, your own, you know, how you deal with your trauma. That is really very important to share with people, because you are not just telling stories from anyone else, but you have experienced it, and you experience it step by step. What were the consequences? You know, what were the reasons, or even what was the biggest reason why you committed or still committing to continue? You know, 5 years is long time, but you know how it affects you, you
Yeah.
know, during the process, because it's always, there is always, sometimes it's setback, and sometimes there is a trigger, and there you are, you feel, oh, I'm stepping back. And then before you get to this point where you really know that, you know that this is what you're gonna do, that's why you are sharing it. Before you get to this point, you know how it felt. And there is this, the blaming, like, oh, that person triggers me, so there is this, the blaming But now it's so interesting, but because you own it, you take responsibility of why you hit the bottom. And that is very important. We have to take responsibility of it. And then if the blaming is gone, then the process of healing, the process of transformation, it gets easier. Have you you know how what I meant?
Right, right. Because your subconscious mind is filled with pleasant memories associated to the addiction, right? So I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I was on Facebook and I saw an old advertisement for Bartles and James wine coolers. And for a moment, I sat there and thought, oh man, that would taste good. Okay, 5 years sober, I have no desire to drink. I know what it does to me, but yet my mind still went back to the past and recalled how that was a pleasant sensation to drink those things. And that's the reason why I need to stay in recovery, because if I ever give into one of those, I'm going to relapse, you know, and if I stay close to my recovery, I can instantly overturn that thought. You know, I can't, I'm not going to shame myself and feel bad about the thought because it's involuntary. It's my subconscious mind. But when I have
Yes.
the thought, how I respond to it is, okay, granted, it does taste good, but I know where that leads me. That stuff is poison for me. Whereas some people might be able to handle it. I definitely cannot. I do horrible things when I drink and I don't want to go back there. So, you know, and that's what I mean by it being a thinking disorder. I still have the obsession in the sense that it's a repeating thought, you know. So if I see certain drinks or I see people drinking, if I'm in certain atmospheres, those things can trigger what I call glamorizing memories. I glamorize the addiction instead of demonize it, and demonizing the addiction is what helps keep me sober, reminding myself of all the bad things that happen when I drink. And they're not worth the good things that I might experience.
Yeah. And consciousness is very important. And that every time you think there is this obsession, where did that obsession come from? So you have to be aware why and what can happen if I go with it.
Right.
And then what? Because you already know. And then it's just the consciousness at the moments that you think, oh, could it could not harm for one time to try it again. And then it takes only one time to do it again.
Yeah, yeah. And I've played around. I quit smoking. That was the most difficult thing I've ever quit. I started smoking in my 20s. I started smoking cigarettes because I was trying to quit smoking weed. And then I took up smoking and I've smoked everything, little cigars, tons of different brands of cigarettes. I've tried them all. Uh, I used gum, I used patches, I used lozenges, I used hypnosis, and I would still go back to smoking. And finally I was vaping, and one day I just lost my vape and I finally let it go. I went, okay, I'm just going to accept the fact that that was a sign. And the thing that allowed me to finally quit smoking is I became willing to quit. I convinced myself, okay, I can't control this habit. I keep going back to it, but if I remain willing, then eventually this sickness will be lifted from me. And that's what happened. Yet about 2 years after I quit smoking, I was at a friend's house and he had nicotine gum and I had a piece. It's like, why? I've already long 2 years passed. I've been nicotine free, but just hanging out with him and wanting to do something, I had a piece of nicotine gum, and thankfully it made me sick. I got sick to my stomach chewing on it because my body wasn't used to nicotine anymore. But you know, that was legitimately a relapse right there, you know. So
Mhm. Yeah, and what happened? How did you stop it? When you had a relapse, how did you get back on track?
I just, the fact that I got sick while I was chewing it told me, look, it just reminded me that I'm already past this stuff, that I don't need it anymore, because smoking was always a crutch for me. I would smoke to help me process my emotions, to help me,
Mm,
subdue my emotions so that I could cope with the situation better. Uh, and
yeah.
it absolutely, just like I was saying earlier, it was a response to trauma. If something was bugging me, I'd have a cigarette, and somehow that cigarette would just take the edge off, as they say. And I was taking the edge off all the time, all day, every day. And I'd gotten sick smoking many times, where I'd get into the 2 pack a day habit, and you start taking in that much, cigarette nicotine, and it just stinks up everything, makes me feel sick. So it was a momentary lapse of reason. It was like, this might be fun, and then when it wasn't fun, I was grateful. I was grateful, and I started, reminding myself that I don't need to smoke cigarettes or have nicotine in my system anymore.
Wow. That's amazing. Because smoking, yes, that is really one of many addictions. It is not because people think it's not that bad. It's not like alcohol, it's not like drugs. But then, yeah, I've noticed that I have clients like after 3 months, they can have a relapse,
Yeah.
3 to 6 months. And then you have to refresh why. You have to go back to the first reason why did you try to stop in the first place?
And from what I understand, each time we relapse, it makes the treatment that we used less valid. So,
Yeah.
if somebody relapses after taking your treatments, then the next time it's going to be less likely to be effective, because unfortunately they didn't address any of the issues, and they still have all the same problems, the reasons why they were using. Um, and now they have an additional layer of doubt in
Mhm.
themselves, in the process. And, now they're looking for some new miracle cure to take it from them. And I would suggest to everybody that getting clean off of any substance, off of any addiction, has far more to do with hitting bottom than it does with treatment. The treatment's supposed to come after bottom. After bottom, that's when you put in the positive, the reinforcements, the mind changing, the behavior changing input, and then you have a real chance at it. But if you're still on the fence about it, like you don't, you need to quit, but you don't want to, that's not the ideal situation to try to quit something. You need to be fully, completely ready for anything to be effective.
Yes, exactly. And very important for any addiction, the reason must be for yourself, not for anybody else. That is really very important. You cannot say, okay, I'll have to stop this because I have to protect my family. I have to stop smoking because it affects my family. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to really focus on yourself. Why? Find the strongest reason why you want to do it for your own. And then the rest will follow.
Right, which brings us to what I wanted to mention. It's like, how do I get to bottom? So if you're struggling with any substance, any type of addiction, this is what I would like to suggest to help you reach bottom. Write about it, journal about it, write out everything about all the bad that happens as a result of your habits. If it's smoking, it stinks up my clothes. It's expensive. I have burn holes in my clothes. I have burn holes in my bed and sheets. Write out all the negative impact, how it affects other people negatively, and really sit with it. Let the emotions of those using consequences affect you. Let your feelings, just give into the feelings and allow yourself to feel just how negative of a force this thing is in your life, because that's what the psychic change has a lot to do with. It has a lot to do with grieving, and grieving is processing emotions. And you can know logically that something is wrong, but if you don't know emotionally something is wrong, then you don't have the emotional intelligence you need to make a decision. And so, step one in so many ways is a decision. It's like, no, I can't do this anymore. I need to do something new. And then you're ready for treatment.
Yes. Make an inventory of the feelings, and then you have noticed that during our with the recording, that first you have to, the reframing. You remember that, and then in the transformation, you picture out the new you without the addiction and how you feel. And then you have to live with that feeling every day. That's the purpose of the 21 days. And if you feel the feeling without the addiction, without the issue, then that is the time.
That's a great point, and I forget that. Yes, if you can imagine yourself living life joyfully without the addiction, not struggling and wishing you were still doing it. That's not without the addiction. If you can imagine yourself the healthier version of you that just flat out doesn't need it anymore. And be realistic. If you're a smoker, you didn't always need smoking to live. You weren't born with a cigarette in your mouth. So at some point you picked it up and it became a habit. So you just remember that we don't need any of these addictions. None of these addictions are required or rule our lives. We had talked about dealing with withdrawals, and there's lots of people that experience withdrawals to varying degrees. If you are severely chemically dependent, then maybe you need medical care. That's not for me to decide. That's for you to decide. But if you're just experiencing the types of withdrawals that are cravings, that are mental withdrawals, well, there's a lot of different ways to deal with that. And we have this thing in recovery. We experience PAWS, post-acute withdrawal syndrome, and it's basically all of your emotions and all the traumas catching up to you at once. Now you're not using it anymore, and all of a sudden your consequences are all coming down on you at once. You screwed up your life, you lost your car, you lost your job. It's very emotional. And more than anything, to get through those withdrawals, you need to connect with some level of inner peace and understand that eventually it's going to be okay. Yes, you're going to experience some painful things, but eventually you're going to be okay. If you stick with a recovery system of any kind, then things are going to improve for you. You are very familiar with grounding. So would you like to tell us about some of the grounding techniques that are effective?
Yes, that is also I have two easy grounding techniques. Yeah, like after the 21 days, it's just we have to be specific, because the mind need a specific number, specific word. So that is 21 days. But after that, it doesn't mean that you have to stop. You have to do something, whatever it is that you feel comfortable, because you don't have to punish yourself while on recovery process. So I always advise them to, one is earthing, just walk barefoot on the grass or on running water. They
Hmm.
say live water, not dead water. So live water from the streams, from anything, anywhere you can find. And if it's under the trees, then it's really it's better. And there is this one thing also, they said you hug a tree. The oldest tree you can find, the better.
Hmm.
Because the tree, you know, the characteristic of the tree, if they stand there for 100 years, they are literally grounded. So, well, it depends on the belief of the person, of course. But I do believe that there is power in there. You know, it's like you feel calm. I do that not very often because I live in the city, but it gives me that kind of calmness that it is really like releasing everything. And then we also feel that during meditation, like surrendering, like forgetting the real world, just like let your mind travel and let it empty, because overthinking is the worst kind of addiction that there is, but people are unconscious about it because we think constantly, and without navigating the thoughts, it creates emotions, and emotions lead to actions,
Yeah.
and that becomes a pattern, and that becomes an addiction. And that is also, I have to mention one of the rule of the mind. It cannot hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time. That's why we have to, during grounding, you focus on one thing and it's positive, or even nothing. Just when I walk on the grass, like I do it 3 to 5 minutes, I 3 to 4 times a week. It depends when it's really bad weather, so I do it once a week. I feel the tingling feeling from my feet. I do it like 5 o'clock, as early as possible, when the grass is still, you know, the morning dew is still there, and it's, you feel the electricity running through my body.
Hmm.
It's such an amazing feeling. And you don't have to think about anything. You just let go. Like if you know the place, if it's in your garden, you can close your eyes, you can walk and close your eyes and just think nothing. And that is really very effective. I got a lot of positive feedback about it. And it really feels, you know, I could not explain it. But if they try it, they know what I meant.
Right. Yeah, and I absolutely have done that. And, I think sometimes we do these things and we're not conscious of the impact it's having on us. And, you know, there's a lot of nature trails around where I live. You can go on these nature trails and you can be fully distracted the whole time. You can be on your phone and talking to
Mhm.
somebody or, with your pet and, but if you can become present and realize that we are nature and all this material stuff that we collect and accumulate, it's unnatural. It's the creation of ego that literally we could all still be living in tents or caves. It's possible. And I'm not saying it's convenient or comfortable, but the reality is we don't need all these material things. The ego wants the material things, and so we
Yes.
keep chasing after it. And wanting more than we can have is a great source of suffering in this world.
Yes, and as they say, we become a slave of the luxury. But I'm not against luxury. We love luxury, but what is important is we have to reconnect to the source. You know, we are provided with everything actually, but you know, because of the technology, because of the luxury that we are used to, it's, we have to admit it. As human as we are, it's nice, but that also causes a lot of problems mentally, emotionally, and if we are aware of it, and we don't have to spend hours to have the me time to do the grounding, to do the meditation, or you can just do it just like few minutes, and it's not much to us. And you can go back to the real world, to the luxury, to the digital world. And yeah, but then it's not automatic for people, because I always make a follow-up and be honest, because you can lie to me, but you cannot lie to yourself. How many times did you take me time? Because I required it. It's really, especially if it's difficult process, do it every day. Like build it up, like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, until you get to the point where 30 minutes doesn't feel like doing the thing anymore. It's like you're enjoying it, you're feeling it. And yes, there is a success, not everybody, but they are getting there. If they don't stop, they will get there. And the price of doing it is peace, is inner peace. And whatever happens, eh, you cannot control the things that are happening around you, but you can manage your emotion, how you react to every event in life. And that's really very important.
Right. And, it's like you were saying, just to reframe it so that people understand what we're talking about. So this process of grounding is a process of connecting with source. You are peaceful at your core. You are naturally and always in a state of peace. This ego thing is what pulls you out of peace. It's your emotional matrix.
Mhm.
And so spending that 30 minutes a day grounding in some fashion, it returns you to peace. So you have a benchmark. And when you're able to do that and to step out of your ego for a short time, it gives you perspective. Okay, how important is this really? I'm making myself sick thinking about something. And when you get peaceful, you can step out of it and realize that you're making too much out of it. And it is very common. I deal with a lot of people who are in toxic cycles with other people, maybe exes, maybe people at work. They have some type of toxic relations in their life, and they ruminate about it. They get fixated on what's that other person going to do? How are they going to respond? What does it mean when they say this? What are they trying to accomplish when they do these different things? Are they using drugs, or so many things? We wonder about what other people are up to, and it just destroys peace. And
Yes.
I'm not saying that we're not supposed to think about those things,
Mhm.
but I would suggest that it's important to, no matter what's going on in your life, that you make time for peace. Otherwise, you become consumed by the drama.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Jeff. The thing is, unconsciously, we take things personally. It's like what other people are doing and saying, and we say, oh, that's not good. That's not what I believe it's good. And we take it personally. But if we really just accept it, that whatever people are doing or saying, it is about you, about anybody else, it's none of our business, and we cannot really control it. We can't just project. Like when we learn something, we just have to show them, not in the sense that we have to force them to do it, because there is this what it called reacting and responding. Because before, when when I am triggered, I was also not very good in handling my emotions. When someone triggers me, like irritates me, I always react, oh, you deserve this. I know I can be a bitch too. But then eventually I realized, when people provoked you, when someone provoked you, it's not about you. It's about them. Something is happening to them, maybe just particularly on that day, and they need to let it out. And it happened that you're there. So you get it. So every time when there is a situation, I always take a deep breath, like, "Okay, it's not about me." And then you use the fraction of time and space to shift into responding instead of reacting. Because if you react, that's automatic reaction, like automatic, oh, what does the person deserve? So bad words, bad action. And what happened? Always it escalates and both are losers. No one wins.
Yeah, I need to work on that myself. I'm working with a guy and I do construction during the week, and he's one of these clients that knows too much for his own good about construction, constantly questioning me, constantly in my business, pointing out flaws, making the job more difficult. And it's I react to him. I don't respond. I get very reactive because it's ongoing and it's constant. And we've had
Mhm.
numerous discussions about it, and he really likes my work and he really wants me to do the work for him, but he's not willing to give me the space and courtesy that I need so that I can work in peace. So I have to limit my contact with this person. I had, that's my response to him is it's like I can go in here for a handful of days and do some things, but then I got to go find other clients to work with that don't drive me crazy. So,
Yeah, I can understand that. That's not easy to deal with because we are surrounded with people. We don't live alone. We work, we deal with people. And mind you, I'm not 100% also in control of my emotions. I'm working on it. I'm working on it because sometimes there are people who are really to get into your nerves. And just try to evaluate, try to, yeah, I know it's a process. By me, it's also a long process before I get to the point like, okay, what can I get? When I have to evaluate, what can I get if I have to say this? But it's not that easy because we have the automatic pilots in us,
right.
and that's very active all the time. If yeah, that is. But along the way, you never know. You before you know it, you are already there. You're a step forward with dealing with people. And that is really something um there is no particular rules on that. Like, okay, the time you have to do this and to do that. It's just learning by experience. And I know you've come so far with that already.
Yeah, but just like Bill W says, we're never cured of alcoholism. What happens is we're given a daily reprieve based on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So I recognize I have bipolar disorder and PTSD, but they're much more manageable now. So
Mm.
if I do respond to trauma poorly, if I do have an angry outburst, it's for a much shorter period of time. It's way more subdued than it used to be. It's not as intentionally harmful, because I was super defensive at one point, and now it's just about trying to establish boundaries. It's not about causing harm. We talked about the 21 days quite a bit. In addition to the recordings that you create for people, what are some of the common treatments that you recommend for that first 21 days while they're trying to, overcome an addiction?
There are so many ways. Meditation is one thing and it's very specific and personalized, really focusing on the issue. And I make short meditations as short as possible, like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, morning meditation, evening meditation. And then first I do a personalized recording, and then later on they can choose whatever makes them comfortable, because I don't want to like make them feel that it's a punishment, because the mind always think when there is something new, it's a torture, it's a punishment, it's something not nice, it's something not new. Unconscious thoughts always nice, it flows freely without anything, without any responsibility. But when you are told to do so, to listen to this. And I know, I understand that. And he said, oh, I have something else to do. And then the excuses, because I know the mind will always find a way to take you away from anything new, especially if it feels like responsibility. And even worse, the mind will think, oh, it's a punishment because you are bad, you are doing this, because there is this inner conversation that will hinder the process. But that's why I let them do, like, just do it, whatever you like. When you love nature, go to the forest. When you love going to the city, just go there and just watch anything and stop thinking about the problems of the world, about your situations, anything. Just make it fascinating, just make it enjoyable, the process. That's really very important.
Right. And so, you do these recordings, you also do sessions with people. And in these sessions, this is when they tend to open up and talk about the things that are troubling them so that they have less burden and less reason to escape. And you had mentioned that childhood trauma was one of the main things that you deal with in your profession, that, people are still processing grief from their past.
Yes, because that's the most ignored trauma. They think when the situation is better, when they are adults, I don't have that anymore. I'm fine with it. But then unconsciously, they are doing things that are so related to that trauma. Like, like one of my clients, like she was really abused, bullied, and then she is now having a good life. And she is still doing things to show those people that she is better. There is no healing in there.
Right.
That's the best example. If you are healed, you don't think those people to show them that you are getting better. You feel better and you don't really care if they see you, if they confirm that you are getting better.
Yeah, so it turns into approval seeking, and
Yeah.
that's another form of codependency. That's people,
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking for
And
validation outside of yourself, that's not healthy.
yes, and by doing so, they can do something stupid because they want to prove that they want to and they are living um a status that is not, a false status, like this is me, but inside it's not. They are suffering from it.
Yeah. Well, and codependency in itself is an addiction. And like all addictions, there's one primary thing that is the symptom. So with alcoholism, the symptom is drinking. That's not the disease. It's a collection of thoughts, it's a collection of behaviors that drive me to want to use alcohol as a means of coping. So I need to identify individually each of those behaviors, each of those thoughts that is causing grief in my life, and find some way to heal it, some way to process it. So yeah, and it doesn't matter what the addiction is. It could be a person, it could be a habit. Uh, I have a younger sister who is addicted to the color red, and it's got to be a certain shade of red. It can't just be any red. It's got to be within a small spectrum of reds, and that's, she has to have all these red things in her life. We can become overly attached to just about anything, and
Yes.
all of those things are just a distraction from reality, that life is far more peaceful with less attachments instead of more.
Yes, that is true, because our mind can really create something, like we said, there is this, whatever you call it, there is this something like the entity that is developed because of the trauma or the ego or whatever you call it. There's always something in there, and you cannot kill it, you cannot delete it forever. You can manage it, you can be the boss, you can be, you can, like in my case, I told you, I have this monkey, but this monkey, if I said, okay, sit at the corner, let me handle this, and it sits, and I take over. And that is how I handle it. And whatever you call it, if you put a name on it, whatever, as long as you know that there is something, and you can command it, like, okay, just calm down, let me handle it. It works for me.
Yeah, yeah. And like you say, it doesn't matter what label you put on it. Some people would say that that's your higher self talking to your ego, and that higher self is the healthy part of you. And in recovery, it's actually part of our traditions, is that we are not, um, I forget the exact wording on it, but we're discouraged from giving people advice on personal matters. We're not here to advise. We're here to support, which is much different. And supporting, I can share what's worked for me. I can say, hey, I choose to do grounding. I choose to do meditation. And this is how it works for me. But it's without expectation. And it's understanding that deep down, everybody has their own answers,
Yes.
and you don't want to get to a point where somebody is telling you what to do with your life. That's less than ideal. You want to be able to get to a point where you can allow the answers to come, where you can quiet yourself enough and understand that your answers come in the silence. They don't come from obsessing about them. Obsession is the building block for addiction, and it can really lead to a lot of serious mental health issues. But the quiet self is the one that can just calmly identify what's best for us. And it may not be what's most comfortable, but it's going to, be what leads you back to peace.
Yes, exactly. That is also something that, yeah, it's we cannot give advice, specific advice to people, because it works for you. And that is really also very important, because I also never tell them, do this because it works for me. It should work for you. Because I don't want people to become like me. They have to be themselves. They have to discover themselves. Because not everything that works for other people works for everybody. That's why there are very many ways. Like Simone, last week was from Australia.
Yeah,
Simone, yes, was holistic, like sound and touch therapy. Was it? She was the
yeah,
one, right?
yeah,
And that is also very effective. So I suggest anything that I know that that works for some people, and they can try it. They have to feel comfortable doing it. Not forcing things to do will not work. They have, like I said, it must be enjoyable, and it doesn't have to feel like a punishment. So it is really, really important to emphasize that. Thank
yeah.
you.
And as we're talking, I want one specific example came up. I'm cross addicted. I participate in several different 12-step organizations. And I am, as an addict and alcoholic and codependent, I see all sides of addiction. And I will be in some of these recovery groups, and people will start talking about, oh, my husband, my spouse, my significant other, they're using, my child, they're out of control. I have a problem myself, but I mean, I'm worried about them. And people will chime in and say, you should leave them, or you should kick them out of the house. That is not recovery. And it's not our business. And you say
Mhm.
things like that, and it can have devastating effects, and someone might take you seriously, and it's absolutely not the right thing for that person or situation. We don't know everything that's going on in somebody's life, and you're not going to find
Yes.
out in and a 3-paragraph Facebook post what is really going on behind the scenes. So, again, I urge people, don't offer advice on family matters, on personal issues. Offer encouragement, offer the solutions that have worked for you. And there's many different approaches to recovery. And you might need several different approaches depending on your circumstances. The more complicated your traumas, the more different approaches you might have to take. So, the sound and touch therapy might add a whole new dimension to your recovery. And, there's other people that are part of our organization that do Reiki and things of that nature. There's benefits in all of it. It just depends on what's going to be right for you.
Yeah, the thing is, or when I handle my clients, it's any kind of issues, it is really important to really observe everything, because their story, there are always 3 sides of it. Like, especially when it involves other person. Like, for example, a relationship. It's her version, the version of the other person, and the truth.
Right.
And most of the time, they come to you for help, but they are not coming for help. They are just coming for support and like, you're right, you are doing the right thing. But then when I come to find out that the situation is different than what she is telling, because we will know it, we will feel it. Like, their story is like they are the victim. Every time, I'm the victim. He is bad, she is bad. But then, until they realize that they have to take responsibility of the situation, because it's never one side, especially when it comes to relationship. It's never one person is the guilty one. It's always both has contributed something to the
Right.
conflict.
And I talk to a lot of people about these personality types, this concept of empath and narcissist, which I've been both. And so I can see both sides of it. And I deal with a lot of, codependency is empathy without boundaries. It's people that give too much. And narcissism are people that are generally takers. And there's reasons why they're takers. They have their own set of traumas. They have their own set of problems and past life experiences that have formed their thoughts into self-serving thoughts. And they aren't aware of how harmful that is, which is also true of the codependents. The codependents, they tend to give more than they can afford to, care more than they should, and overinvest, and then they're pissed off about it. Again, speaking from experience on both of these things. So, when you're codependent, you end up being angry at some narcissist, but they don't know any better, and you don't realize that you could be setting boundaries. You don't have to engage in harmful behaviors with somebody that's only going to take. You can learn how to set limits. So both parties are basically equally sick, and that's the whole nature of the law of attraction. Is we're going to attract people with matching dysfunction until we heal the parts of us that need them. So
yeah, that is really true, because narcissists cannot function when with the strong people, with the people who are aware. They cannot function because they want control. If they cannot control, they lost power.
yeah.
That's the reason why, oh, I am with a narcissist, I am the victim, oh, it's a worse situation. But first, you have to evaluate, why are you staying in that kind of situation? What is your rule in that situation?
Right.
Because I cannot leave, because he will kill me, whatever. There are so many reasons. No, you are not. You have the choice all the time. It's just not easy to make the choice and to take the action. And that is the crucial part. Recovery.
Right.
Yes.
And the sad thing is, it's like you were saying before, they're in that situation because of their childhood traumas. Their unresolved childhood traumas are causing them to attract another situation where they're also going to not have their needs met. You know, that's just the nature of it. We just continue to attract this lesson over and over and over until we, break the cycle and figure out a better way to live. And I'm not saying it's easy. I've been working on my codependency issues since 1989, and I still have codependent behaviors. You would think by now I would know better, but they're so deeply embedded in my subconscious mind that I have to take a look at every interaction individually. Every time I deal with anybody, am I giving too much? Am I not giving enough? Am I expecting too much? It's a daily inventory I have to take on these behaviors.
Yeah, exactly. And childhood trauma, that is a really very serious. So one of the way to part of the process is becoming the loving parent if the child has issues with the parents, or upgrading the child is just really how the belief that is developed, like when the child is bullied, and the words from the bullies becomes the reality, and the child believes that it's true, that I'm worthless and I'm not enough and this and that. So that is also part of the process, upgrading the child, like it's not me anymore. There are a lot of yeah, that's the whole process. I cannot discuss it here. Is yeah, we don't have time, I think. But
Yeah,
that is really very effective. There are so many ways. So becoming the loving parents, becoming, um the praises you always wanted, you can give it to yourself, because that is also the I am not enough syndrome that causes a lot of trouble. Like that is universal. Everybody has sometimes that kind of syndrome, that I am not good enough as a partner, as a colleague, or as a person.
yes.
And
And
yeah.
that is a very common model. Adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families, another 12-step group, they use that model, the reparenting model. That
Mm-hmm.
you become your healthy parent and
Yes.
heal the broken parts of you, through this recovery process. And yeah, it's then could be an entire episode just talking about the wounded child.
Yeah. I think next time we're gonna elaborate more on it. I think childhood trauma, focus on it, the different behavior that developed, and then to give our viewers the insight, and to maybe they feel, oh, I have that, and how to manage, how to manage their emotions, and maybe just by doing this, we never know who needs to hear this. So
Right, absolutely. And just to remind people, Selyna is a professional. She is available to talk about your trauma. She is a trauma specialist, and talking about our traumas with someone safe is one of the key aspects of recovery, whether 12 step or otherwise. Being able to bring up these things from the past and process them and talk to somebody about them that's not going to shame or judge us. It's a really important part of getting past the traumas of our past. So feel free to reach out to her. And another great episode. I appreciate your time so much. Um, Anything else that you wanted to add before we close things off?
it's my pleasure, Jeff. And thank you so much. You are really doing this wonderful work, you know. And now that we are here, we always go back to the first encounter, how you transform, how you evolve, how you grow. What's amazing is that you really own it. Every episode you say, I am a codependent person, I was an addict, and that is something that our viewers also, or anybody can learn. That is really very important. That alone is very, very effective to start the process of anything, any kind of addiction, any kind of. But yes, I am so amazed. It's, you always say that, oh, I am this, but you are the example. You're the living example, and very genuine also. You feel
Thank you.
the, you know, the, you are not making it up. You own it, you accept it, and your 12 steps of recovery. I know there's so many people who can use that. And
Well, this,
let's continue. Thank you so much for making this show, and for it's amazing. Thank you.
right, right. Yeah, like, just to close things out, I have to give credit, the honesty and transparency that you're seeing in me. That's the gift I received from sitting at lots of 12-step tables. That it took me many years of recovery to get to this genuine. And I'm not always myself, but I prefer this version of me. And so, I just learned that confession is a very healing thing. My confession gives permission to other people to own their baggage as well. So thank you again for the compliments, and we'll see you next week.
Sure. Thank you, and enjoy your Sunday.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Bye, Jeff.